Dying rancher gave his last medicine to a native girl. Next morning, the shaman was at his bedside. His ranch was far away from the nearest town, tucked between rolling hills and thick forests. The morning sun always rose slowly over the hills, casting golden light over the fields. Thomas had loved the quiet, the endless sky, and the smell of fresh earth after rain. For him, the ranch was more than land. It was life itself. But now, as he leaned weakly against the wooden fence, he felt the weight of years pressing down on him more than ever. Thomas had been sick for months, though he had always tried to ignore it. His body was tired, and even simple tasks felt like climbing a mountain. He coughed often, and each cough left him breathless. The doctor in town had told him that nothing more could be done. Medicine could help ease the pain, but it could not change the outcome. Thomas had accepted that he would not live much longer. Yet, despite the fear that lingered in the corners of his mind, he found comfort in the familiar routine of the ranch. Feeding the horses, checking the fences, and walking through the fields brought him peace. On this particular morning, Thomas noticed something unusual. At the edge of the forest, near the old creek that cut across his land, a small figure appeared. At first, he thought it was a deer, but as it came closer, he realized it was a girl. She looked no older than 12 or 13, with long dark hair tied loosely behind her head. Her clothes were simple and worn, but clean, and her eyes were wide and alert, shining with both curiosity and fear. Thomas felt a pang in his chest. It was not often that anyone came this far out into the hills. The girl stopped a few feet from the fence, watching him quietly. Thomas took a slow step forward, leaning on the fence post. "Hello there," he called gently. "Are you lost?" The girl shook her head, though her eyes darted nervously toward the forest. I am not lost," she said softly. Her voice was calm, yet there was a hint of fear. Thomas could sense that she had been through something difficult. "What brings you here so far from home?" he asked. She hesitated, then spoke. "I am sick. I need help." Thomas felt a sharp twist in his heart. His own illness had taught him the importance of care and kindness, but he also knew the limits of his own strength. He thought about the small bottle of medicine he kept locked in his cabinet, the last of its kind. It was rare, expensive, and had been saved for himself in the hope that it might make his last days easier. But as he looked at the girl, he realized that the medicine could mean the difference between life and death for her. He motioned for her to come closer. She stepped forward cautiously, her bare feet sinking slightly into the soft soil. Thomas noticed the bruises on her arms and the pale color of her skin. She had been traveling for a while, and it showed. Yet, despite her suffering, there was a strength in her posture, a quiet bravery that impressed him. "I cannot promise you a cure," Thomas said, his voice trembling slightly, "but I can try to help you feel better." The girl nodded, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. Inside the small cabin on the ranch, Thomas carefully retrieved the vial of medicine. He held it in his hands, weighing the decision in his mind. This was the only bottle left, and using it meant giving up the last chance he had to ease his own suffering. Yet he could not ignore the girl's need. Her life seemed fragile yet precious, and he knew that sometimes the greatest gift one could give was hope. "Here," he said, handing the medicine to her. "Take this exactly as I tell you. It will help you, but you must be careful. It is very strong." The girl took it with both hands, her eyes wide with gratitude. "I will follow your instructions," she promised. Thomas watched her leave, heading back toward the forest. He felt a strange mixture of sorrow and satisfaction. He had given away the last piece of hope for himself, yet he knew that he had done the right thing. There was a peace in selflessness, a quiet warmth that filled the empty spaces inside him. He returned to his chair by the window and watched the hills, the morning sun painting everything in soft light. The day passed slowly. Thomas could feel his body growing weaker with each hour. He rested often, but even in his weakness, his mind remained alert. He thought about the girl and hoped that she would find safety and care in her village. He imagined her recovering, running through the fields, smiling with health and happiness. These thoughts gave him comfort, even as his own strength waned. As the evening approached, Thomas reflected on his life. He remembered the years spent caring for the land, the animals, and the few people who had crossed his path. He thought about the hardships he had faced, droughts, storms, and illness, and the small victories that had made life worth living. Most of all, he remembered kindness, the simple acts of helping a neighbor, offering a hand to a stranger, or sharing a meal with someone in need. Life, he realized, was measured not by the years one lived, but by the moments of compassion shared with others. Night fell, and the ranch grew quiet. The stars shone brightly in the clear sky, and Thomas felt a deep connection to the world around him. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and earth. He thought about the girl once more, wondering if she had reached home safely. He hoped that someone in her village would care for her, and that the medicine he had given her would work as it should. As he drifted toward sleep, Thomas felt a mixture of fear and hope. He was afraid of the unknown that lay ahead, but he also felt hope in the simple truth that he had done something good. He had chosen to help another, even at the cost of his own comfort and safety. It was a lesson he had learned slowly over the years. True courage often meant putting others before oneself. In the quiet of the night, Thomas felt the presence of the land and the spirits that seemed to inhabit it. The ranch, the hills, the forest, they were all part of him just as he was part of them. And in this unity, he found a sense of peace. He closed his eyes, listening to the gentle sounds of the night, and let his mind rest. For the first time in many months, he felt a lightness, a freedom from worry. He had done what he could, and that was enough. The night stretched on, long and silent, but Thomas did not feel lonely. He knew that life continued beyond the boundaries of his ranch, beyond his own body. The girl he had helped carried a piece of his spirit with her, and that thought warmed him against the chill of the evening. He thought about the morning, about the sun rising over the hills once more, and about the endless possibilities that still existed in the world. As Thomas lay in his bed, wrapped in his old quilt, he whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude for the life he had lived, for the people he had met, and for the chance to give something meaningful to another human being. In that moment, he understood that even as life grew short, there was still beauty, still hope, and still love to be found. And so, with the stars shining above and the wind rustling softly through the trees, Thomas fell into a peaceful sleep. It was a sleep filled with memories, reflections, and the quiet satisfaction of having done what was right. Outside, the ranch waited, the fields bathed in moonlight, and the world continued its steady rhythm. Inside, Thomas dreamed of the girl, healthy and safe, carrying the gift he had given her into a future bright with possibility. The girl walked carefully through the hills, clutching the small vial of medicine tightly in her hands. Her bare feet brushed against the soft grass, and each step reminded her of the kindness of the man who had given it to her. She had traveled a long distance from her village, seeking help after days of illness. The medicine was her only hope, and she knew that without it she might not survive. But now, with it in her possession, she felt a spark of strength returning to her body. Her village was not far, yet the path was not easy. The hills rose and fell in gentle slopes, dotted with rocks and bushes. A narrow stream ran alongside the path, and she paused to drink from it, cupping the clear, cold water in her hands. The taste was refreshing, and she felt energy return to her tired body. She looked at the vial once again, remembering the rancher's gentle face and his quiet words. He had trusted her with something precious, and she vowed not to waste it. As she moved through the forest, she thought about the people she would see again, the elders who had cared for her, the children who played near the river, and her own family. They would be overjoyed to know she was alive and well. She also thought about the rancher, a stranger who had risked his only chance to help her. She had never met anyone so selfless, and the memory filled her heart with gratitude. The journey was not without challenges. The sun climbed higher in the sky, making the day warm and tiring. She had to navigate through thick brush and uneven terrain. At one point, she stumbled over a hidden root, scraping her knee, but she quickly stood up and pressed on. Her determination was strong, fueled by the hope that the medicine could heal her. With each step, she felt the sickness inside her begin to weaken, as though the kindness of the rancher had carried its own magic along with the medicine. By late afternoon, she could see the first signs of her village in the distance, smoke rising from small fires and the faint sound of children playing near the riverbank. Her heart lifted, and she quickened her pace. As she drew closer, an elder woman appeared from behind a tree, her eyes widening in surprise and concern. "You made it!" the woman exclaimed, rushing forward. She held the girl's hands, examining her carefully. "How are you feeling?" The girl smiled weakly but firmly. "Better," she said, showing the vial. "This helped me. A man gave it to me at his ranch." The elder's eyes softened, and she nodded. "You are lucky," she said. "We will care for you now." The woman led her to a small hut where other members of the village were waiting. They had heard whispers of the girl's journey and had prepared to help her recover. Inside, the girl was given warm food, clean clothes, and a comfortable place to rest. She drank the food slowly, savoring each bite, while her body gradually absorbed the strength the medicine provided. Over the next few hours, her energy began to return. She could sit upright, and her cheeks regained some color. She spoke with the elder about the rancher, describing his gentle voice, the kind look in his eyes, and the decision he had made to help her despite his own suffering. The villagers listened in silence, impressed by the courage and selflessness of a man they had never met. News of the rancher's kindness spread quickly through the small village. People spoke of his generosity, amazed that a stranger could care so deeply for someone he had never met. Even children whispered about the man who had given away his last hope to save another. The girl felt proud to have been the recipient of such a gift, but she also felt a deep responsibility to honor it. She promised herself that she would grow stronger, live well, and carry his story forward, so that others would remember the rancher's act of compassion. As evening approached, the girl stepped outside the hut to watch the sun set over the hills. The sky turned shades of orange and pink, and the river reflected the colors like a mirror. She felt a quiet sense of peace, knowing that she was safe, cared for, and alive. Yet in the back of her mind, she thought about the rancher. Who was he? Why had he given her the medicine knowing it might mean his own suffering? She did not know, but she felt that somehow their lives had been connected for a reason. The night in the village was calm. The air smelled of burning wood and fresh grass, and the sounds of nature filled the silence between the huts. The girl lay on a simple mat, wrapped in a warm blanket, feeling the slow rise and fall of her chest. She could feel the strength returning steadily, and her thoughts drifted to the man who had helped her. She whispered a quiet thank you into the night, hoping that somehow he could feel her gratitude. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Thomas had endured a long day alone. His body was weaker than before, and he struggled with every movement. Yet his heart was calm. He thought about the girl and hoped that she had reached her home safely. Though he had given away the last of his medicine, he felt a sense of fulfillment. He had acted with kindness and courage, and that, he realized, mattered more than anything else. As darkness fell over the ranch, Thomas lay in his bed, listening to the wind rustle through the trees. He thought about the journey the girl would be taking and the life she might lead now that she was strong enough to recover. A sense of connection filled him, a quiet bond between two lives that had briefly crossed, each changed by the other. The world felt larger and warmer, even in the quiet solitude of his cabin. In the village, the girl's recovery continued through the night. The elder and other villagers stayed by her side, ensuring that she drank enough water, rested, and avoided exhaustion. She dreamt peacefully, and in her dreams she saw the rancher's face, smiling gently. She felt safe, as though his presence lingered nearby, protecting her even from afar. Morning came slowly, with soft light filtering through the trees. The girl awoke feeling stronger than she had in weeks. She could move freely, her limbs no longer heavy with fatigue. She dressed quickly and stepped outside, breathing in the crisp morning air. The village was alive with activity, children playing, animals moving through the fields, and smoke curling from the chimneys. The girl smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she had not known before. The elder approached her, holding a small bundle of herbs and food. "You are well now," she said kindly. "Take these with you, they will help you stay strong." The girl bowed her head respectfully. "Thank you," she said, holding the gifts close. "I will remember your kindness and the kindness of the man who helped me." Her thoughts returned once more to Thomas, the rancher who had given his last medicine. She wondered about his condition, whether he was resting, and whether he knew that his gift had saved her life. She felt a desire to repay him, not with material things, but with her own courage, determination, and gratitude. She knew that one day she would find a way to honor the man who had believed in her when she was weak and alone. The morning passed with quiet routine in the village. The girl helped with small tasks, collecting water, feeding the animals, and assisting in the hut. Each action reminded her of the strength that had returned to her body and the kindness that had restored her spirit. She moved carefully but with confidence, and she felt the warmth of community around her. For the first time in weeks, she felt truly safe and alive. Late in the day, she climbed a small hill overlooking the village. The land stretched out before her, rolling hills and forests bathed in golden sunlight. She closed her eyes and thought about the rancher, imagining him watching over the hills, just as she was watching over the village. She whispered a quiet promise to herself, to live well, to grow strong, and to carry forward the spirit of generosity and care she had received. And so, the girl began her new chapter, healed in body and strengthened in spirit. The medicine had done its work, but the kindness of the rancher had done even more. She felt a deep sense of connection to the world around her, a bond that reached beyond her village and into the distant hills where a lonely rancher rested. She knew that life was fragile, but that acts of compassion could create ripples far greater than anyone could imagine. As night fell over the ranch, Thomas sat by the window, looking out at the hills bathed in silver moonlight. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. He had spent the day moving slowly, taking small steps to check on his animals and the fences, but each movement left him exhausted. His body felt weaker than it had in weeks, and yet his mind was restless, filled with thoughts of the girl he had helped. He leaned back in his chair, his hands resting on his lap, and closed his eyes for a moment. Memories came unbidden, drifting through his mind like autumn leaves carried by the wind. He remembered his childhood on the ranch, running through the fields with his brothers, laughing as they chased each other past the old barn. He remembered the seasons of planting and harvest, the hard work, the long days of sweat and effort, and the satisfaction of seeing life grow from the soil he had nurtured. But now his memories were tinged with sadness. He thought about the years he had lived alone, the friends who had passed away, and the family he had lost. The ranch had always been a companion, a steadfast presence in his life, but it could not replace human connection. His illness reminded him daily of the limits of his body, of the finite nature of life itself. Each cough, each ache was a reminder that time was slipping away. Yet even in the face of his weakness, Thomas felt a quiet pride. He had done something meaningful that day. Giving the girl the last of his medicine had been a choice that required courage, and he had made it. He thought about her face, the gratitude in her eyes, and the promise she had made to follow his instructions. That thought warmed him like a fire in the cold night. He realized that even though his own days might be few, the life of another could continue because of his actions. Thomas's mind wandered further, reflecting on the idea of kindness and the nature of giving. He remembered times when neighbors had helped him during harsh winters, bringing food, fixing fences, or simply sharing conversation by the fire. He realized that life was full of small acts that often went unnoticed but created connections that could last forever. And now he had added his own act to that chain, a link in a circle of care that extended beyond his understanding. As the night deepened, Thomas felt the weight of solitude settle upon him. The ranch was silent, save for the soft sounds of the wind through the trees and the distant cry of an owl. He thought about the girl's journey and wondered if she was resting now, if the medicine was helping her as he had hoped. He imagined her safe in her village, surrounded by the people who loved her, and he felt a surge of relief. The thought brought a calmness he had not felt in weeks, a momentary peace in the midst of uncertainty. Yet, despite the calm, fear lingered at the edges of his mind. He was acutely aware of his own frailty. Each breath seemed harder than the last, each movement a challenge. He wondered if he would wake in the morning or if this night might be his last. The thought was frightening, but he did not dwell on it. Instead, he focused on memories, on gratitude, and on the quiet satisfaction of having done the right thing. Thomas's thoughts drifted again, this time to the idea of life beyond death. He had always believed in the land, in the seasons, in the cycles of nature that continued regardless of human life. The hills would remain, the rivers would flow, and the animals would live on. Perhaps human life was only a small part of a larger story, one that continued in ways he could not fully understand. The girl's survival was part of that story, a continuation of life that he had helped to create. As he sat quietly, he noticed subtle changes in the room. The moonlight cast long shadows across the floor, and the wind carried whispers through the trees outside. It was as if the ranch itself was alive, observing, comforting, and sharing in his thoughts. He felt a presence, not frightening, but gentle and reassuring. He could not explain it, but the feeling gave him comfort, a sense that he was not entirely alone in the night. Hours passed slowly. Thomas dozed intermittently, waking with a start each time he heard the wind rustle against the cabin walls. He thought about the girl's courage, the journey she had undertaken, and the trust she had placed in a stranger. He felt a deep admiration for her resilience, recognizing in her the qualities he had valued most in life: bravery, hope, and gratitude. He realized that the small actions of one person could influence the lives of many, creating ripples that extended far beyond what could be seen. As midnight approached, Thomas felt the ache in his chest deepen. His body was tired, his limbs heavy, and his breath short. Yet, even in this state, his mind remained clear, reflecting on the day and the choices he had made. He thought about the importance of selflessness, of putting the needs of others above his own. It was not always easy, he knew, but it was the essence of what made life meaningful. He had experienced hardships, loneliness, and loss, but through kindness, he had found purpose and connection. In the quiet hours, Thomas began to dream, though it was not like sleep he had known before. His dreams were vivid, filled with images of the girl running through the hills, her laughter echoing through the forests. He saw her healthy, smiling, and surrounded by friends and family. He felt pride and joy, as though he were witnessing a future he had helped shape. The dreams were comforting, a gentle reminder that life continued beyond the boundaries of his own existence. Even as the night wore on, Thomas remained awake at times, thinking about the bonds between people, the cycles of life, and the importance of hope. He recalled stories from the village nearby, tales of elders and healers, of rituals and ceremonies that honored the land and the spirits that resided in it. He had always respected those traditions, even if he had never fully understood them. Now, in the solitude of his cabin, he felt a connection to those unseen forces, a sense that his actions had been noticed and appreciated beyond the physical world. By the early hours of the morning, Thomas's thoughts had grown quieter. The wind had softened and the stars began to fade as the first light of dawn touched the hills. He felt a calm settle over him, a sense of completion and acceptance. He had given what he could, helped another in need, and lived according to his values. It was enough. He understood, in a way he had never fully grasped before, that life was not measured by length but by meaning, and his actions had meaning. As the sun rose, Thomas opened his eyes, watching the light spill over the hills. The world was waking, birds calling in the trees and the river sparkling in the distance. He felt a quiet gratitude for the beauty around him, for the land that had supported him, and for the lives he had touched. And even though his body was weak, his spirit felt strong. He had done something significant, something that would ripple outward, beyond the ranch, beyond the hills, and perhaps even beyond his own understanding. He thought about the girl once more, hoping she would remember the kindness he had shown, and that she would carry it forward into her life. He did not know what the future held for himself, but he felt that he had fulfilled his purpose. He had lived and he had given, and that was enough. The ranch was quiet, the world still, and Thomas felt a deep connection to everything around him, a sense that life in all its fragility was still beautiful, still meaningful, and still worth experiencing. And so, in the stillness of the night turning to dawn, Thomas rested, not in fear, not in sadness, but in the peaceful understanding that he had acted with kindness, courage, and love. The world continued to move around him, the girl's journey continued beyond the hills, and life, in its endless cycle, carried on. Thomas closed his eyes once more, feeling the quiet presence of the land and the spirits that inhabited it, and for the first time in many weeks he felt completely at peace. The next morning, Thomas awoke to a sound he did not expect. There was a quiet knocking at his cabin door, soft but deliberate. His heart beat faster, not from fear but from curiosity. He pushed himself up from the chair where he had spent the night, his body heavy and weak. With great effort, he moved to the door and opened it slowly. Standing there was a man he had never seen before. He was tall and composed, dressed in simple, traditional clothing, with a long wooden staff in his hand. His eyes were deep and calm, and there was a presence about him that seemed larger than life. Thomas could sense a quiet power and wisdom in the man, and though he did not speak yet, Thomas felt a strange sense of reassurance. "Good morning," the man said softly, his voice calm but commanding. "I am a shaman from the village nearby." Thomas blinked, surprised. "A shaman?" he asked, unsure why the man had come. I did not expect anyone here so early." The shaman nodded slightly. "I know. I have come because of the kindness you showed yesterday. The girl you helped carries the life you gave her. She is safe now, and your actions have been noticed, not only by her village but by the spirits that watch over this land." Thomas felt a mix of awe and disbelief. He had acted without thought of reward or recognition, simply giving the girl what she needed. Yet here was this man telling him that the act had significance far beyond what he had imagined. "I only did what I thought was right," Thomas said humbly. "I gave her the medicine, that's all." The shaman smiled gently. Sometimes what seems small to one person can be great in the eyes of the world. Your generosity has created balance. The land and its people remember acts of kindness, and your gift has brought healing, not just to the girl but to yourself, in ways you may not yet understand. Thomas invited the shaman inside, leading him to the chair by the window. The shaman's presence was calming, almost as if the air itself had grown lighter. He looked around the cabin, observing the simplicity of the life Thomas had built, the worn wooden furniture, the shelves lined with jars and tools, and the quiet strength that radiated from the man who lived there. "Sit, if you wish," Thomas said. "I am not sure what brings you exactly, but I am honored by your visit." The shaman sat, placing his staff across his knees. "I have come to offer a blessing," he said. "A blessing for the life you have lived and for the choices you have made. The girl is safe because of you, and now it is time for you to receive peace, strength, and understanding." Thomas felt a warmth spread through him as the shaman spoke. The words were not magic in the ordinary sense, but they carried a deep resonance, touching something within him that he had not known for years. He thought about the night he had spent awake, reflecting on his life, and he realized that this visit, this moment, was part of the cycle he had sensed but not fully understood. The shaman reached into a small pouch and brought out a few simple items: dried herbs, a feather, and a small bowl of water. Each item seemed ordinary, yet Thomas could feel the energy in them, a quiet vibrancy that spoke of connection to the land and to life itself. The shaman began to speak softly, chanting in a language Thomas did not understand, but the meaning was clear. The words were not just sound, they carried intention, healing, and gratitude. He waved the feather gently over Thomas, letting it brush across his hands and shoulders. Then he sprinkled water in small circles, muttering prayers that seemed to echo through the room. Thomas felt a warmth in his chest and a lightness in his body, as if a weight he had carried for years was lifting. It was not pain-free, nor was it a cure for illness, but it was a comfort, a deep reassurance that he had lived rightly and that his actions had mattered. "Your kindness has created a path," the shaman said, his eyes meeting Thomas's. "The girl you helped will live, she will thrive, and your legacy will continue in ways you may not yet see. The spirits of the land honor your heart, and in turn, you are blessed with peace and connection. You have given life, and in giving, you are renewed." Thomas felt tears welling in his eyes. He had not expected recognition, nor had he wanted it. Yet, hearing these words, he realized that his simple act of compassion had reached far beyond his understanding. It connected him to the land, to the girl, to the village, and even to something larger than himself, something eternal, enduring, and wise. The shaman stood, placing his hand lightly on Thomas's shoulder. "Rest now," he said. "Let your body and spirit feel the balance you have helped create. Your choices have mattered, and your life, even in its final days, has meaning beyond measure." Thomas nodded, feeling a profound sense of calm settle over him. The shaman's presence was like a bridge, connecting the world he had known, the hills, the animals, the lonely cabin, with the wider circle of life and community. He felt gratitude not only for the girl's survival, but for the understanding that kindness, once given, creates ripples far beyond imagination. The shaman prepared to leave, walking slowly toward the door. Thomas felt a gentle sadness at his departure, but also a deep respect. "Will I see you again?" he asked quietly. The shaman smiled. "Perhaps when the time is right, but know this, you are never truly alone. The land, the spirits, and the people whose lives you touch are always near. Your heart, open and brave, has made a lasting difference." With that, the shaman stepped out into the morning light. Thomas watched as he walked down the small path, disappearing among the hills and trees. The sound of his staff against the earth faded, leaving only the gentle rustle of the wind. Thomas stood at the door for a long moment, feeling the energy and peace that the shaman had left behind. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a calm so deep that it seemed to touch the very core of his being. Returning to his chair by the window, Thomas looked out over the ranch. The hills glowed softly in the early sunlight, and the wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. He felt connected, to the girl, to the shaman, to the land, and to the cycles of life itself. The sense of fear and worry that had haunted him for weeks was gone, replaced by a quiet joy and understanding. His life, in all its simplicity and hardship, had created something meaningful. He thought again about the girl. She was safe, healed, and thriving because of his choice. That knowledge filled him with contentment. Even if his own days were limited, he had made a difference, and that was enough. He realized that life was measured not by the length of time one lived, but by the impact one made and the love one shared. Throughout the day, Thomas moved about the ranch with a sense of peace. Feeding the animals, checking the fences, and tending to the small garden, he felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. The sun rose higher in the sky, warming his skin, and he breathed deeply, savoring the scent of earth, grass, and fresh air. Life, despite its fragility, felt full and vibrant. By evening, Thomas reflected on the visit of the shaman. It had been a reminder that even in solitude, even in illness and weakness, one's actions matter. He understood that kindness creates connections that extend beyond sight, touch, or immediate recognition. The girl's survival, the village's gratitude, and the blessing of the shaman were proof of this truth. Thomas watched the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for his life, the challenges, the joys, the losses, and the small victories. He had lived fully, acted with courage and compassion, and now he could rest with a heart free of regret. As darkness fell, he prepared for the night with a new sense of calm. The stars shone brightly above, and the wind carried the whispers of the hills and trees. Thomas lay in bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch and the distant call of an owl. He thought of the girl, smiling and healthy, and felt a deep connection to her, to the shaman, and to the wider world. For the first time in a long while, Thomas felt completely at peace. His life, with all its simplicity and struggles, had made a difference. And in that understanding, he found the comfort, courage, and hope that would carry him through whatever days remained. Days passed quietly on the ranch, and Thomas felt a new calm in his heart. The visit from the shaman had left a lasting impression, and he moved through his daily tasks with a gentle patience he had not known for years. Each step, each gesture seemed lighter, as if the burden of worry and fear had lifted. Feeding the horses, tending to the garden, and checking the fences no longer felt like chores. They felt like acts of gratitude for the life he had lived and the choices he had made. He often thought about the girl. Though he had not seen her since the day he gave her the medicine, he felt connected to her in a way that transcended distance. He imagined her laughing, running through the fields of her village, safe and healthy. That vision brought him a sense of warmth, a quiet joy that filled the spaces left by illness and solitude. He realized that by helping her, he had created a thread of life that stretched beyond his ranch, beyond his own experience, and into the world. As the sun rose and set each day, Thomas found himself reflecting on the meaning of life. He thought about the struggles he had faced, the harsh winters, the storms that tore through the fields, the moments of loneliness, and the small victories that had carried him through. He realized that life was not measured by the years one lived, but by the choices one made and the love one shared. By giving his last medicine, he had created something lasting, something that would be remembered beyond his own lifetime. One morning, a rider appeared on the distant path that led to his ranch. Thomas squinted against the sunlight and saw the familiar figure of the shaman approaching once more. The man dismounted slowly and walked up to the cabin, his presence calm and steady. Thomas greeted him with a nod, curiosity, and respect in his eyes. "You are well," the shaman said softly, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who understood life deeply. "Your heart has found balance. The girl is thriving, and the village speaks of your generosity. Your actions have created a legacy, one that will endure beyond your time here." Thomas felt a deep sense of gratitude. "I did not expect recognition," he said. "I only wanted to help her, but knowing she is safe, it brings me peace." The shaman nodded. "That peace is the reward of a life lived with courage and compassion. You have given more than medicine. You have given hope, and hope is eternal." With that, the shaman offered a blessing once again, touching Thomas's shoulder lightly and speaking words that resonated in the quiet of the cabin. Thomas felt a warmth spread through him, a calm certainty that he had lived rightly. Even as his body remained weak, his spirit felt renewed, strengthened by the knowledge that his life had meaning and that his choices had made a difference. In the days that followed, Thomas moved slowly but with a renewed sense of purpose. He tended to the ranch with care, appreciating the beauty of each sunrise, the sound of the horses, and the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. He reflected on his life with gratitude, recognizing the moments of kindness, courage, and resilience that had shaped his journey. Each day, he felt the connection between himself, the girl, the shaman, and the land deepen, creating a sense of belonging and fulfillment that he had not known in years. Meanwhile, in the village, the girl flourished. She grew stronger each day, her laughter returning, her energy renewed. She often spoke of the rancher who had given her the medicine, telling stories of his kindness and courage to the elders and children alike. The villagers admired the bond that had formed between her and the stranger, recognizing the power of generosity and selflessness. The girl carried the memory of his gift in her heart, and it inspired her to act with compassion toward others, creating ripples of kindness that spread throughout the community. Back at the ranch, Thomas continued his quiet routine, but he no longer felt alone. He felt connected to something larger, the land, the people he had helped, and the cycles of life that carried on beyond his understanding. He knew that his days were limited, yet he faced each one with peace, gratitude, and a sense of purpose. The knowledge that he had made a difference gave him strength, even when his body remained frail. One afternoon, Thomas sat by the window, watching the sun cast long shadows over the hills. He thought about the girl, imagining her running along the riverbank, her laughter mingling with the sounds of the village. He felt a quiet joy in knowing that she was alive, thriving, and carrying forward the life he had helped preserve. It was a reminder that even small acts of kindness could create lasting change, and that one life could touch many others in ways that were unseen but profound. As the days grew longer, Thomas reflected on the lessons he had learned throughout his life. He understood now that true courage often meant putting others before oneself, that generosity could create bonds stronger than blood, and that acts of kindness had a power beyond measure. His thoughts returned often to the girl, and he felt a deep satisfaction in knowing that his final choice had given her hope, health, and the chance to continue her life. Even as his body grew weaker, Thomas remained engaged with the world around him. He tended to the garden, mended fences, and watched over the animals with care. Each task, no matter how small, became an opportunity to connect with life, to appreciate the beauty of the land, and to honor the choices he had made. He no longer feared the end, for he understood that his legacy was not measured by the years he had left, but by the love and compassion he had shared. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple, Thomas sat quietly by the window. The world was alive with sound, the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, and the flowing of the river nearby. He felt a profound sense of connection to all that surrounded him. His heart was calm, his mind at peace, and his spirit light. In the village, the girl continued to thrive, carrying the story of the rancher's kindness with her. She helped care for others, shared her gifts, and inspired those around her with her resilience and gratitude. Her life became a living testament to the impact of selflessness, and she often thought of Thomas with fondness and respect. The bond they had formed, brief yet meaningful, shaped her understanding of courage, generosity, and the beauty of human connection. Back at the ranch, Thomas faced each day with the same quiet determination and contentment. He understood that his life, though finite, had mattered. He had lived with integrity, acted with kindness, and created ripples that would continue beyond his own experience. Even as his body weakened, he felt a profound strength in knowing that his choices had brought life and hope to another. As the years passed slowly, Thomas continued his routine, always mindful of the land, the animals, and the small joys that made life meaningful. He felt the presence of the shaman's blessing, the girl's gratitude, and the enduring connection to the wider world. The ranch became a place of reflection, peace, and quiet fulfillment, a testament to a life lived with courage, kindness, and love. In his final days, Thomas felt no fear. He had given his last medicine to save another, experienced the gratitude of those he had helped, and received the blessing of the shaman. His life, in its simplicity and quiet heroism, had created a legacy of compassion and hope. As he lay in his bed one last time, watching the sun rise over the hills, he felt a deep sense of peace. He thought of the girl, alive and healthy, carrying the gift he had given her into the future. He thought of the shaman, who had reminded him that kindness creates ripples that extend beyond the individual. He thought of the land, the hills, the animals, and the countless moments that had shaped his life. And in that reflection, he understood the truth he had always sought. That life is measured not by years, but by the love, courage, and generosity one leaves behind. And so, Thomas rested, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the ranch and the knowledge that his life had mattered. He had given what he could, acted with integrity, and touched the life of another. The girl he had saved would carry his story forward, and in her life his legacy would continue. The world, vast and eternal, held within it the echoes of his compassion, and in that, Thomas found the deepest peace.